Thank you, Ms. Van Noy, and good evening, everyone. I'm Square Watson, Chief Operations Officer for St. Louis Public Schools. This evening, we're going to give an update in regards to our Proposition S. This is our oversight committee, so definitely we're going to be 16. And so, as I kind of begin this presentation tonight, I'll be joined by our collaborative partners with our Grice group, Grice Trivers, background noise, Navigate, and last but not least, Corrigan Clark Idner. So tonight's presentation will more or less kind of focus on the following agenda items. We'll be discussing.
Where, excuse, can Sadie and I open the meeting first?
I'm sorry, Ms. Hubbard. Can you hear us? Okay?
Yes, I think Sadie and I are supposed to open the meeting as the co-chairs. So I would just like to call the meeting to order and hand it over to you because you know what's going on.
Do we need to take a vote or anything, or go ahead and begin with me?
I think we can just begin.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hubbard. So as co-chairs, Ms. Hubbard, as well as Ms. Wise, again, we thank you all for joining us this evening. So tonight we're going to provide just an overview of where we are with the bond issue and with a particular emphasis on our, what we call our master facility plan, or our master facilities planning for the district. I'd like to also, before we get into the work from the architectural firm, Corrigan, just kind of want to give an overview of some of the services and the task orders from the other firms, as well as Navigate, who will serve as our construction management firm through the whole process of the bond issue. So we have Grice Trivers. They'll be working, and they're in the process of creating designs for what we call our gender neutral restrooms. They also be working with our room signage, and that will more or less kind of be a compliance issue with the fire marshal. And that's just ensuring that our exterior windows and signage for all of our buildings, in particular to our first responders, that is visible and color coded. Grice Trivers will also be helping with the design of our auditorium upgrades, as well as our gymnasium upgrades for our elementary schools, and ADA upgrades throughout our 62 facilities. As I roll over to Corrigan Clark, they'll be tasked with providing renovations for C Central, CSMB complex, locker rooms at Gateway STEM High School, a new stadium, athletic stadium, and last but not least, this master facility plan. Now, just a little background in regards to this master facility plan. During our first bond issue back in 2009, the district conducted what we call an MGT study, a comprehensive facility review, and it was conducted by the firm MGT. This comprehensive document more or less focused on how we can improve student achievement or student learning. It was also a capacity and utilization data, had our assessment of our facilities, and then it also provided some recommendations in regards to any renovations or capital projects, as well as any other items such as any major repairs, any thoughts in regards to grade configurations, and just giving a newer look or lens at how the district operates so that we can be more efficient and more effective in how we teach and learn throughout the district. So as a second round of this, what we call this MGT study, we tasked Corrigan Clark, i.e. Idner, with an updated version of our master facility plan. And again, this particular plan will involve multiple stakeholders. And with that being said, I will turn it over to Corrigan Clark, Steve Raskin, Mr. Greg, Ms. Tiffany Dawkins, and their team to talk more about what this master facility plan entails, and more information in regards to the approach and the data that we collected during this process. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Corrigan Clark. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Would it be possible for us to present our our presentation locally. We do have a couple of minor edits that I think would be helpful for the group to view this evening.
So who do you want me to give access to?
Julie Villa, please.
So you want me to close what I'm sharing and you're going to share your own?
Correct. Thank you.
And while we're actually transferring over the rights for Corrigan Clark to begin their presentation, tonight they'll just kind of discuss this framework for the master plan, the process, talk about some schedule and timelines, and then we'll open it up for any questions. During the interview or during the presentation, if there are any questions, please feel free to chime in. We do want to make this interactive. We do want to make this engaging. And then we'll follow up with any miscellaneous items and updates and final words from myself and from the co-chairs, Ms. Hubbard and Ms. Wise. So thank you all, and thank you for your participation and time.
Ms. Julie, you'll have to let people in if they enter the lobby now.
Okay. Julie, could you go back one to the agenda slide, please? So, Mr. Watson, thank you very much for that introduction. Again, my name is Steve Raskin with Corrigan Clark Ittner, and presenting with me this evening is Julie Villa, our Director of Programming and Planning for Corrigan Clark Ittner. We're delighted to be with you here this evening. Our purpose is to provide an update in terms of the master planning process. We are only in the initial phases of this particular process. So really tonight, what we're doing is talking to you about how this process is going to roll out. Some of the individual components, including the framework by which we're going to accomplish this master plan. We'll go through the specific elements of the planning process. We'll focus specifically on the data-driven and the decision-making components. Those include the facility condition assessment, demographic analysis. Will include additional considerations that we'll discuss. We'll also talk about public relations and engagement, and ultimately we'll talk about schedule and deliverables. The other thing I would like to point out is, as Mr. Watson mentioned earlier, we'll try and keep our comments brief. I believe we've got about 30 minutes or so, and we'll try and stick to that timeline. However, we've got a relatively small group this evening, so if there's any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to answer your questions and provide as much information as possible to the committee. So real quickly, I would like to point out that the master planning process is really a team-related effort. Corrigan Clark is Ittner is a AE firm that's been around for almost 124 years. We're proud to be, the design architect for many of the best buildings district-wide. But as part of this effort, we've really engaged a number of partners to really provide a comprehensive master planning solution to the district. It includes not only our firm-wide resources of 135 architects, engineers, and planners. Clearly, we're partners with the St. Louis Public Schools, the stakeholders, the administrators, and people like yourself this evening. A company called Bureau Veritas, you may recognize them as a company previously known as MGT. As Mr. Watson had mentioned, they had done an assessment back in 2009, and we're leveraging a lot of the work that they had done previously as part of this assessment. Also a company by the name of Business Information Services. They'll provide demographic analysis. They will be looking at specific items like live birth data. We'll be tracking enrollments, and we'll be doing demographic analysis with those partners. Also, Vector Communications, who actually is another partner with the St. Louis Public Schools currently. They provide engagement and public relations. They were a partner with us. And most importantly, it's really the community. It's the neighborhood. It's the neighborhood groups. It's the stakeholders, the parents, the students, and the teachers that work so hard within the district. Next slide, please.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the master plan framework. I'm sure you are probably all familiar with the citywide plan for education that was just published back in July of 2023. And that was obviously quite a comprehensive process with a lot of input from a lot of different groups and stakeholders to develop a plan that would focus on reimagining what the education ecosystem in the city of St. Louis should look like. And the blueprint is really the what and the why. And what it needs to be followed up by phase 2, which defines the how and the when. And what we're going to look at tonight is the beginning of implementing that phase 2, the how and the when. So there were 5 work groups within the blueprint: school experience, community, health, wellness, safety, infrastructure, and education workforce. And we've pulled a couple of different points from each of them that will help to inform us as we move through this process. Some important things to keep in mind related to infrastructure. For instance, providing a well-rounded education in a safe environment was one of the recommendations of the school experience work group. The community work group with the school as a hub that supports neighborhood stability is something that we will keep in mind as we determine what kind of improvements should be made in the various facilities, including resources and services for health, wellness, and safety, and providing professional development opportunities. Not that any of them aren't important, but I think for us as facility planners, the most important work group and recommendation set will be the infrastructure, which called for facilities that support 21st century learning and to ensure the effective use of public assets and delivering opportunities for all students. So we need to be constantly cognizant of how funds are being spent in the best way possible and to benefit the students most of all. These are some questions that were posed by the infrastructure work group, and I think we will be asking them as we move forward, as well as searching for answers. Do all children have access to a place at school? Do they feel welcome? Is the building inviting? Do they feel safe there? Do the school buildings provide a safe and healthy environment? Are the learning spaces optimally designed for learning? Does the school's design facilitate pedagogy and community engagement? And can the school infrastructure be designed to evolve sustainably over the longer term? The 5 work groups had some themes that really came up quite often through the process. And I think each of these is important, but again, the school as anchors and hubs of the neighborhood. Number 2 is a mandate for community engagement, and that's obviously really important during this process, but it's important for any kind of public project. And we'll talk more about what that will look like as we move through this process. Equity for all students and equity in facilities. And then number 5, future decisions about school infrastructure, systems, and operations should be data and evidence driven. And this gets us into our master planning process, which is really about data-driven decision making. We are currently in step number 1, which is the data gathering step. We're going to go into more detail about the facility conditions assessment and the demographic analysis and the facility capacity utilization this evening. But other things that we will look at as we begin to get to know the facilities is accessibility, educational adequacy. So we look at accessibility and inclusivity, safety and security, energy efficiency and sustainability, and equity between facilities. Once we are done with the data gathering, we'll start to talk to stakeholders in the district about space needs. And this is both data-driven as well as community-driven. So what do we hear from the teachers? What do we hear from the administrators? What do we hear from the neighbors in the community about space needs for the building? With that information, as well as the data gathered in step 1, we will develop space optimization scenarios. And these are options that we will work to develop with the district that will lead to recommendations for a capital improvement plan. The capital improvement plan will include the prioritization of repairs, renovations, new construction, relocations, and repurposing. We will have diagrammatic floor plans and concept renderings for recommended improvements. We'll also have cost estimates for recommended improvements, and that's really important and something that we will be doing continually throughout this process to make sure that we're spending the taxpayers' dollars in the wisest manner. It will also include a timeline and phasing of those capital projects. The 5th step is the commitment to act on the master plan, and that is something that comes out of the buy-in from the community, the buy-in from you all, from the stakeholders, from the district administration, to move forward with the recommendations in the plan and to act on that plan. Over on the right, you'll see community engagement and stakeholder input. And that's not a step so much as an overlay to the entire process. What that looks like is, number one, building upon the community engagement that was already done during the development of the blueprint, but also meeting with stakeholders and community groups on a regular basis at each of these steps. So we would envision that as being at least a town hall or a public meeting in different neighborhoods at each of these steps. For the facility utilization and capacity analysis portion of this plan, we start to look at the sites for each of the facilities as well as the buildings themselves. And this is a sample from another district of a site plan analysis that starts to show where the building entries are, where people move in and out of the site, playgrounds, circulation for both buses as well as cars on the site. And then we develop these plans, these use plans for each and every one of the facilities in the district, which identifies the curriculum or the use of each classroom, as well as the size of each classroom, cafeterias, gathering spaces, gyms, communal spaces, administration areas, things like that, so that we can really understand how the buildings are functioning and what the true capacity of each of the facilities is.
So another component is really the facility condition assessment. That's where we're actually looking at the physical infrastructure of all of the existing properties. So we'll be looking at every single building, whether it's occupied by students or not. If it is on the rolls for the SLPS district, we will make sure that we'll include it as part of this assessment. And this is just a sampling of some of the individual building elements that we'll be looking at, whether it be site infrastructure, athletic fields, underground site utilities, structural frame, building envelope, walls, roofs, doors, building envelopes, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, ventilation. We'll also be looking at life safety, fire protection, safety and security, as well as a host of whole other elements that really are part and parcel to each of the buildings within the district. Next slide, please. So what you see here is just a screen capture. This is a sample from another project where we start to identify individual locations. We'll have data sheets for each of the buildings, and each of the data sheets will have a series of exhibits similar to this one that will describe not only the observation of particular building elements, we'll look at specific building components, we'll look at conditions of those components, but equally important, we're going to identify the quantity, the costs, and the replacement life cycle of those particular components. And this will be very important as we talk more about the facility condition index a little bit further. Next slide, please. So this next item is really about a facility condition assessment. So really the first question is, what is an FCA or an FCA assessment? Which really is the systematic process of evaluating the physical conditions of the buildings, the infrastructure, and the site. And we do this for a couple of reasons. One is to develop budgeting, risk assessment, and capital funding needs for the district as it moves forward. But this is a very data-driven exercise. It's based upon quantifiable scales that are industry standards. We use something called an FCI rating scale, which is a very simple calculation based upon the total building repair cost, based upon all of the information that our architects and engineers and our consulting partners that go through individual buildings will identify what those costs may be. We'll then look at real-time current building replacement costs, and we come up with a percentage. It's very simple. The higher the percentile, the darker red in color, the worse the building is. The lower the percentile, the more green in color, the better that building is. As the colors become darker and darker red, as you see as the illustration on the top right-hand side, those become candidates for building replacement or for significant renovation. And it's an important tool that we use as part of our team in terms of identifying opportunities to best utilize capital budget dollars in the future. Next slide. So as part of this exercise, we are proposing to tackle this in a very formulaic way. Obviously, we don't want to go through all of the buildings at the same time. What we propose to do instead is to do a sampling. What you see here is a sample data sheet for Carr Lane VPA Middle School. What we will be doing is we'll be identifying one middle school, and we'll be identifying one targeted elementary school. The purpose being that we want to take a look at the individual components. We want to be having kickoff meetings meeting with the district administration, operations, trade leads from both the district as well as the building level management. We'll be working with the owner's representative, Navigate Building Solutions. We'll also be coordinating the evaluation criteria that we talked about a little bit further. We'll be walking the buildings with the staff to evaluate specific building conditions, and we'll be developing draft reporting. And this is important because we want to make sure that what we identify as part of our walkthrough, what we develop as part of our reporting, and most importantly, as part of our final comprehensive report of deliverables is the information that is the most value both to the master plan as well as to the SLPS district moving forward.
So that was the facility condition assessment portion of the master plan data gathering. Demographic services are also part of the data gathering that we will do. And I'm sure you're familiar with kind of the concept behind that. The image on the right is a draft of the school age population change projections. And so that's the kind of mapping exercise and data gathering that we will do. The colors indicate a range of change in school age population in the next 10 years. But we're going to analyze this data to follow projected trends throughout the district and to drive future decisions on the master planning process. This is an example of demographics for a single elementary attendance area, and this is not specific to our district, but just an example of the amount of data that will be gathered for each attendance area. And then we're also going to compare projections to actual enrollments throughout history, throughout time. And this is important to look for trends, but also to see what we can learn from the past. Particularly, the last couple of years with COVID has affected enrollment in a number of interesting ways. So looking for trends on both sides of that event. A couple of other considerations that we will keep in mind throughout this process. One is the historic significance of many of the buildings in the district. As the historic architect for several of those buildings, we're very cognizant of the history of them. As some of these are buildings that our firm designed maybe 100+ years ago. There's at least 12 facilities on the National Registry for Historic Places in the district, and then there may be more within the city's various historic districts. So it's important to identify these. And while the historic significance wouldn't be the only factor for making a specific decision about the future use of a building, but it is one of many factors that we will consider as we look at improvements and potential changes to some of the facilities. We're also looking at a number of peer district master plans as case studies. The goals, the messaging, and the outcome of each of these master plans that was completed in the last couple of years is very different, but we can learn something from each of them. And so we are looking into the San Antonio plan, the New Orleans master plan, the Detroit Public Schools master plan, as well as the Chicago Public Schools master plan to learn lessons from those districts. Let's see. And Steve talked about some of our contracted and subconsultant partners at the beginning of the presentation, but there's going to be a lot of stakeholder neighborhood groups that we will be working with throughout this process as well. Our process on identifying space needs really starts with interviewing district faculty, district administrators, as well as students, maintenance people, and community members. Getting together with the Young Scholars is one of our highlights of this process. We really learn a lot from the students about their buildings, about where they feel safe, and especially about opportunities that they may see in the facilities that we haven't seen yet. Also working with work group leaders, the Board of Education, and this committee, the Prop S Oversight Committee. Neighborhood and anchoring community organizations will be important to this process too. We won't get buy-in without involving them throughout the process.
And also, we're very fortunate as Corrigan Clark, and as I mentioned earlier, through our 124-year history, we've been so lucky to partner with so many districts, like St. Louis Public Schools. And we really feel it's our responsibility to give back to our communities. And we really feel that's important. And we do that in a couple of different ways, whether it be mentoring and working with young scholars in the schools and helping them to better understand what the architecture and engineering design disciplines might be, job shadowing, project visits, a whole host of opportunities to share what we have learned as professionals to help guide the students of the St. Louis Public School District in terms of learning about what we are and who we are and how we do our work as architects and engineers. And another way that we do that is really through scholarship opportunities. One of the ways that we've done this is we've introduced a built environment scholarship program. This has been in place for a number of years that we work with other districts. The opportunities that are open to college-bound young learners. And we give them cash forwards for tuition, books, so that they can better have opportunities for higher education that they may not have otherwise. So we look forward to these as well as other opportunities to give back to the St. Louis Public Schools and the St. Louis City community that have been so good to us over a 125-year history. Next slide, please. So I apologize for the small scale on this one. This is just an excerpt of one of our work plans. So as architects, as designers, our mantra is always plan the work and work the plan. So this is the very beginning and a very outline. This doesn't include all of the particular details at this point, but it just gives you a quick snapshot in terms of how the process starts to develop. We start with the facility conditions assessment. We go through our pilot program. We have a series of kickoff meetings, field work, draft reports, district reviews, templating, data gathering, estimating, and reporting. And these are all very carefully orchestrated with critical path elements. And it's, as you can imagine, a project of this scope and magnitude, it's really critical that we have an opportunity to plan every element of it. We do something similar with the demographic analysis, whether it be the data gathering, whether it be looking at district-wide enrollments. We look at those critical path milestones. At the end of September, for instance, we'll be getting our batch of data from the school district as it gets reported to the state in terms of enrollment. So these are critical elements for us in our process so that we can get that information, act upon it in a very timely manner, and get on to the next step of the process. As Julie had mentioned, the community engagement is a continuing opportunity and effort that'll take place over a vast period of time. The master planning effort as well in terms of all the different tasks that Julie had mentioned early on. And ultimately, we're looking at wrapping up our final report, our recommendations and presentations to the board, obviously with a tremendous amount of input from this group, as well as all the other stakeholders and community leaders. We're anticipating wrapping that up in the next 16 to 18 months so that we're ready in the first quarter of 2025. So with that, I hope I kept it to about 30 minutes. I hope we've given you some information that is of value, and we would like to take this opportunity to answer any questions you might have for us.
Could we unshare the screen so we can see each other? Thanks.
I don't necessarily have much of any questions. I do want to commend you all for the work that you've put in moving this process forward. I know that it's a lot entailed to what is going to be needed. I want to make sure I heard you correctly on your scheduling. Can you go back to the scheduling? You were saying the process or the stages of this, it looks like, or I heard you say that it will be completed come 2025.
As I mentioned, it's about a 16 to 18 month process.
Okay.
So we're looking at, yes, we look to have this wrapped up with final revisionings basically in March of that year, correct.
So you're looking at the master plan in itself to be completed, but are we looking for progress or stages to be moving as we're working on a master plan?
Oh, excellent question. And forgive me for not being more clear.
Thank
Throughout
you.
this entire process, we'll be looking at everything from condition assessment, from demographic analysis, through all of the individual elements of the master planning process that Julie had identified earlier. We will be reporting to you and sharing data with you as often, quite frankly, as you'll allow us. This is a very collaborative and two-way dialogue. This cannot be done in a vacuum. We'll need the support of all the people on this call, all the people within the district and the community to be doing that. And really, it is going to take all of us to really be successful with this. So our commitment is to be open, transparent, communicative, share information with you as often as you'll allow it, and get your feedback all along the way.
Thank you.
I teach sociology, so I have questions about your data. When you're finding out your demographic data, how are you finding it? How are you measuring it? There were a lot of different colors and shapes on your map. How are you coming up with those?
Well, the answer to that question is we actually contract data from about 4 or 5 different sources. We get most of it from the state of Missouri. We'll get some from the city. We get others from private entities. We compile that data. We also look at everything from data that currently exists within the SLPS system. We'll be looking at who lives where, what school they go to, what school they may not go to. Maybe they are private, maybe they're parochial, maybe they're homeschooled, maybe they go to charters. We're going to be looking at all those different opportunities to look at not just the students that attend SLPS, but we are going to be looking at all of the student population within the city of St. Louis. In terms of what we do with that data, it really is a very complex calculus because we'll be looking at where those students are, what schools they're going to be attending. We're going to be looking at that information down to a building level. We'll find out the number of students in a particular local classroom. We'll find out how much square footage is available in a particular classroom to support that number of students. So really, we're looking at it from live birth data all the way up to those that are up to 60 years of age. We're going to be analyzing a whole series of criteria all along the way, and then we'll take that data and we'll incorporate it into the actual, as it works within the educational curriculum. I hope that's not too generic for you because I know you're looking for specific detail, and I'd be happy to share as much as I can, but I wanted to at least give you a quick summary of what we're doing with everything.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. I have one more question about your using New Orleans as their master plan as a guide, because I'm sorry if you're hearing my son playing clarinet and other kids making noise. But they are an all charter city and would have very different.
Yeah, and we're not looking to any of those plans as a guide per se, but we're reading them and reviewing them to see what we can learn from them. They are districts with similarities in some way or another, whether it's size or kind of the issues that the district is currently facing. So it's not that it will be a guideline, but it will be something that we review and become aware of to see what lessons we can learn from it.
So if I'm hearing you, and it sounds like what I'm understanding is you're basically taking the blueprint and you're looking at the infrastructure aspect of the blueprint, and you're going into the phase 2 process of it on the infrastructure is what it sounds like I'm hearing. And you're taking that with this master plan and creating the right size to help us kind of identify where it makes sense to have schools based on the demographics that we have of our students, of the population. I don't want to say of students, but of population. Is that what I'm sound like I'm hearing?
we will be implementing the blueprint in the way of the infrastructure work group and the recommendations there. We don't have an agenda right now. We don't know where the data that we gather is going to lead us. What we do need to keep in mind is that we need to be cognizant of the best way to spend the dollars in the district to benefit the students the most. So our data gathering process, as we've explained, will be extensive and will help us to understand what the next steps are moving forward.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Well, I definitely like to thank Steve and Julie for just kind of giving us a real overview in regards to what the master facilities planning will look like. As you just kind of heard, it's definitely going to be an intense, but definitely an intentional and focused document that will best serve the district as we move forward in our 21st century learning. One of our commitments to the district is centers around what we call our 3 C's. And you kind of heard a lot of it, the first being the collaboration. And these are just our partners and stakeholders, which you're getting a glimpse of the works from Corrigan Clark. And then there'll be in our future meetings, we'll also talk with Grice Trivers and, of course, our construction management firm, Navigate. But collaboration is one of the big pieces as we work together in regards to this specific cause and this good cause of supporting our 21st century learners. The next piece is communication, which quite frankly kind of begins with these meetings, these oversight committee meetings. We'll be informing not only this committee, but we'll be informing school leaders, our administration, and the general public as a whole, because ultimately the general public supported this bond issue with 87%. So we'll be having our communications both using our dashboards as well as our as you pass by schools, you'll see the signage posted in all of our facilities in regards to the work that'll be done and completed through this bond issue. And our last C is customer service. And as you heard through the presentation, there's a form of giving back and giving back through mentoring opportunities and exposing our young scholars and our future leaders in the field of architecture, engineering, and construction management. So we're going to more or less kind of surround ourselves around these 3 C's and continue to collaborate in an intentional way, communicate to not only our stakeholders and our community, but to our school leaders, and provide the best customer service to ensure that, as Ms. Julie kind of mentioned, that we're spending dollars in appropriate and an intentional way, but that best supports the city and the schools as we move forward in this space. So this meeting and this presentation was really just to give an overview because this will be an important part. And one of the things that I heard throughout the course, and I just want us to be aware that that community engagement piece and ensuring that we get feedback and hear the voices of the community throughout this process. So each step of the way, from the collecting the data and making some of the decisions, to the facility condition assessment, the demographic analysis, they will all have some form of community engagement where we will be in front of the community, talking to the community, listening to the community, most importantly. And then lastly, as we kind of wrap these items up, those recommendations will be made not only to the district, but to the board and the community as a whole. Again, I think it's being transparent and working together for a common cause and for a good cause. So this more or less wraps up the presentation tonight. We are going to hold future meetings. I do have some tentative dates, and this will be sent out to the committee as a whole. Our next date, tentatively, we're looking is December the 7th, and it'll be around the same time. And all these dates and times will be on Thursday evenings, but December the 7th at 6 p.m., March 14th, 2024 at 6 p.m., June 13th, 6 p.m., September the 12th, and December the 12th. As we get closer to those dates, we'll determine whether we'll remain in a hybrid state. But we definitely want to be able to go out to a site and location just so you can get an opportunity to get the feel and the view and the perspective of the school. In most cases, we'll see a lot of this work, or we'll see the schools in their current condition, so that you'll be able to see in the final condition once a lot of these projects are underway. So before I pass it on, just kind of want to open it up if there are any other questions or anything good for the group before I turn it over for the final words from our chairs, Ms. Wise and Ms. Hubbard.
Susan, go ahead.
Okay, I'm not mute now. Listening to all this is very encouraging. And at the same time, I'm concerned over the steady decline in enrollment over the last 15, 20 years. And I hope that we're not planning for continuing decline, and that we find a way to recapture those students in that part of the community that is not participating in this discussion and is not paying attention to us because they've written us off. You know, in the last few weeks, we had the news that the Hawthorne Charter School was closing. And there should be efforts to recapture those students from that community. At the same time, there's been news that the Kairos School is expanding into a high school, which is not needed in this city. But they are getting cooperation from city government to demolish buildings and build a new building. Somehow, I hope that through this process, we expand our footprint and our network and our community in the city. I know that new buildings are shiny objects and that they attract students, but a lot of our old buildings are quite beautiful and can be made to look new. I remember when Frabel was renovated 10 or 15 years ago and a new wing was built on, all of a sudden the student body doubled, and there was a crisis because they couldn't hold all of those kids in the building. But when the neighborhood saw the district investing in that building, they wanted to put their children there. And when some kids were redistricted out to other buildings because they couldn't fit in Frabel, the parents were up in arms. So there are a lot of things that I hope that we're all thinking about, and I just hope it leads to an end to the decline in enrollments and a future for the St. Louis Public Schools that is much more bright and successful.
Thank you for that feedback, Ms. Herc, and definitely received and noted.
I think I had one more question. So we are going to have a plan that is a document by the first quarter of 2025, which is going to be here much sooner than I expect. When does the work start? You know,
We've already begun.
Tell us about like our school needs a wheelchair ramp. There's like we need it right now. And you know, I know that we have a process and that we're not the only school, but you know, when are the signs going to start popping up?
Well, I think I can address it. There's probably two pieces to that puzzle. The master planning exercise is really a document by which we collect data and make recommendations. I think your question might be more appropriate for Mr. Watson in terms of immediate needs, and I'll probably defer to him on that.
Thank you, Steve. So in regards to the signage, so we're currently, as we kind of finalize the work, and this will be in conjunction or in collaboration with Navigate, those signs are more, so part of this piece is this communications piece, and that's following up, because right now as they currently going and Navigate as well as Corrigan Clark are assessing our buildings we're putting some estimates, some cost estimates that are really kind of help ensure that we're selecting not only the right projects, but prioritizing them appropriately. The thing that I definitely have to put in perspective is that we have over $350 million worth of needs throughout the district, and $160 million of the bond issue that passed. So we have to be real strategic when it comes to prioritizing the project, but it does come with a collaborative effort of not only this team here, but also with our stakeholders and our principals. So, so to answer the question, the signage is underway, meaning we do have a list of those projects that we have prioritized. Now it's just a matter of us getting more of a cost estimate, and really trying to be more intentional and make sure we hear all the voices from the schools prior to us putting the signage up. Because once they're up, these are the projects that we do plan on completing. And we also make sure that, and this was similar to what we done in the last bond issue, that we have a dashboard or something on online or using the internet that'll address and be visible and transparent as much as possible. And I also pass it to Navigate to kind of add to this conversation in regards to the signage.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. This is Corey Baxter-Mueller with Navigate. Yeah, I think what I'm kind of gathering from some of the people is you're asking about the work that's going on concurrent to the master plan, the construction that's actually happening today. So there is some projects that we are working on currently, as Ms. Watson was mentioning, the signage, along with the potential fencing. There's some flooring, some painting. There's a bunch of miscellaneous projects that we are working on. So it's not like the district is sitting here waiting for construction to happen from this master plan. There are things that the district is aware of and knows of, and working through and prioritizing that list is what we've been doing for the past few meetings, and we're going to continue to do and start putting those packages together and concurrent with the district to go out to the public and move forward with it. The drinking fountain is another one that's currently in the process of moving forward right now, or in the process of actually in construction right now. I believe that's what you guys are looking for. Is what is happening outside of the master plan that is currently ongoing. It's not just waiting 18 months for the master plan to find out what to do. Is that what I'm hearing from everyone?
Yes, that's what I was wondering.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, this master plan is really a separate path to look at some grander items, but we do know there are some immediate needs that the district and Navigator are working hand in hand to resolve and put packages together and keep moving forward with those needs.
I typed my question, but I'll ask it when my kids are quiet. Are we able to see the list of the prioritized projects?
So to answer that question, we do have that list. We're still kind of fine tuning it, but once as a collaborative effort, with this is involving Navigate as well as both architectural firms, really kind of get to a concise agreement about these are the projects that we want to move forward. And we're getting close to that point now where, as Corey just kind of mentioned, some projects we're definitely underway with, from the fencing to the water bottle filler stations to some flooring projects. But some of the other bigger projects, when it comes to our restroom upgrades, some of our ADA upgrades that we're doing through the district, that does require just a little bit more intentional efforts. But to answer the question, hopefully we'll have something soon. We're having something sooner than later so that we'll be able to roll out to this committee first prior to us releasing this to the public.
I have one more. I've been searching for the Prop S stuff, as we're preparing for the meeting, and all of the old Prop S is still on the website, and it is a smidge confusing. So that's probably not your job, but it is something that we need to make sure gets taken care of.
Thank you for that, Ms. Hubbard. We'll get that addressed. I do see one other question in the chat regarding how regular will these meetings be as a means of oversight for this process?
Oh, you answered that when you gave me the dates.
Okay.
Thank you. That was earlier. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Any other questions? Again, I want to thank all for participating. Again, this is definitely in conjunction with the citywide planning, in conjunction and in collaboration with our partners here with Cordigan Clark, Bryce Trivers, and Navigate. The goal is to ensure that we provide the city of St. Louis, in particular to the district, something that, as I'm seeing, this will be something that will be monumental. Part of the process, and we spoke to this at some of our earlier process oversight committees, is that we're going to be documenting this whole process, including these meetings, but also including the work, because I feel that once this is completed, this will be something that will definitely gain national attention, and that all other districts will want to know how we did it and the way that we planned this in a strategic and intentional way. So with that being said, I'll pass it over for any final remarks and words from my chairs, Ms. Wise and Ms. Hubbard.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. We appreciate everyone being here this evening for this meeting. We care deeply about the transparency of this work, and so it is wonderful to come together and hear these plans. We look forward to seeing you all at the next meeting. And with that, I will close this out. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.